week number 8 in our study of the ministry. Well, in the study of biblical places, we're going to spend most of our time tonight in the ministry of Jesus. However, we're going to step back clear to our first map, and it won't take us long, but during the course of teaching this a year ago, Doc and I had a discussion about the Garden of Eden. And I know that everybody wants to know, where was the Garden of Eden? So we're going to talk about this. Doc Van and I had a discussion about the Gulf of Aqaba, and that's from the Arabian Peninsula. It's way over here. It's in another place, but that was not accurate. It should have been the Persian Gulf, which is what this is on the maps. On the map here, it's called Persian Gulf is in parentheses.
It's called the Lower Sea.
Or the Lower Sea. Okay.
What map is this?
Is there a map in the book that matches this?
Map 5, map
Yeah.
6? Which map?
Go to
Map 1, isn't it?
map 4.
Map 4?
Let's see.
Canaan is divided among the 12.
Get your hands off of it once. Let me just see. What's over here? No, there's not
Map
enough.
4 there.
There's not enough of it.
Map 5 there.
Map 1.
Map 1. Go to map 1. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Go to map 1 in your book. And if you don't have a book, I'm sorry. We'll try to project what we can for you. Doc has the map up on here. Basically, folks, we've been studying mostly over here about the land of Canaan. We've been down here in Egypt, okay? All we're looking at is we've stepped out and taken a bigger chunk of the map of the Mediterranean. You shouldn't be lost by now. You should know where you are. This is the Mediterranean Sea. It has never moved. It's still in the same place that it was when God created it, okay? And so very much the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which move this way, okay, remember? And in correction of our error, we just want to talk about, we'll look at the map and follow the Euphrates River from about Haran in Assyria to the area titled Ancient Coastline in the Lower Sea, which is this part here, okay? Haran was where? Up here? Who went up there? Can you remember from the first lesson? Ur of the Chaldees, there, see that Ur?
Yeah,
Who was that Ur of the Chaldees?
Abram.
Abram, okay? And went from Ur of the Chaldees up here, and we're just following this river down here, just for an illustration of where we are. We're right in this area,
Okay.
okay? And so additional information on the Garden of Eden is provided here from Halley's Bible Handbook. Scriptures in parentheses are referring to Genesis, which you can't see the parentheses here, but it says, it was on the Euphrates and Tigris rivers as their junction with the Pishon and Gihon. And it says the Pishon and Gihon have not been identified on this map. It says the Euphrates and Tigris rise in the Caucasus Mountain region of Southwest Asia. Okay, Caucasus Mountains right in here. Okay, and it says they flow southeastward and empty into the Persian Gulf. So follow that blue line right above the red line there. See the red line and see the blue line? Okay, that's where the Euphrates and the Tigris flow. And it says this man may be said to have, this map may be said to have been created at about the center of the Earth's surface. For this Caucasus-Euphrates region is approximate center of the Eastern Hemisphere, which is the largest of the two hemispheres. Ethnologists quite generally consider this region to have been the original home of all the present races of men. It was the region from whence came the ox, goat, sheep, horse, pig, dog, apple, peach, pear, plum, cherry, quince, mulberry, gooseberry, vine, olive, fig, date, almond, wheat, barley, oats, pea, beans, flax, spinach, radish, onion, and most of our fruits and vegetables. Is the cradle of the human race. And then it speaks of Babylonia, okay? It's right in here. It says, while there are some who think that the Armenian highlands on the headwaters of the Euphrates and Tigris, which may not have been as high above sea level as it is now, it says, might possibly have been the particular site of the Garden of Eden. The traditional and generally accepted site of the Garden of Eden is Babylonia, near the mouth of the Euphrates. Okay? Babylonia, the mouth of the Euphrates, right here. Okay?
I see it on map 7,
That's where I'm at.
right down there. Yeah, there it is.
You find it?
It's the only one I can find.
On map 7,
Map 7?
yeah,
Okay, very good.
It's pretty clear.
Babylonian Empire
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah, it's better defined there probably.
It has the Tigris and the Euphrates flowing together.
Mhm.
Okay. At present, the Euphrates and Tigris unite about 100 miles above the Persian Gulf. Okay. Our scale of miles is down here. There's 100. So you're looking at, on this map, you're looking at a little stretch of
In Babylonia.
right there.
Babylonian
Okay.
Empire.
In Abram's day, the Gulf extended inland as far as Ur. Okay, there's Ur.
There's Ur right there.
Yeah, it's filled in since then.
Yeah, and the two rivers entered the Gulf by separate streams, as indicated by the dotted lines on the map on the page that he's referring to here. He says the whole Babylonian plain was made by alluvial deposit of these two rivers. The riverbeds changed their courses often. In Adam's time, possibly two rivers may have united for a short distance and divided again before entering the Gulf, the garden being on the united stream between the junction and separation of the rivers, thus making four branches or heads, the two rivers continuing to the east and west coast of the Gulf, called Gihon and Pishon. And it's just talking about this area right here. Okay. In ancient inscriptions, the Persian Gulf was called a river. As was stated earlier, both the Gulf and the rivers may not be quite where they are shown because of the Great Flood. So we only have those biblical descriptions of where the garden actually existed. Okay? And that's all we're going to talk about, the Garden of Eden. So forgive me for a second. I'm going to flip the map over and we'll get on to Jesus' ministry.
So what was the conclusion of the matter? Did we decide that? the
It's
Garden of
somewhere in
Eden-
that general area.
Babylonia?
Yes.
The Garden of Eden?
If you will look on your map right there, that's approximately where the Garden of Eden was. We don't know exactly. There's nothing that gives us an exact definition of where it was.
God doesn't want us to know.
Probably better that
That's
we
why he
don't
put an angel there.
know.
With a flaming sword.
It's probably better that we don't know.
They're all stuck together?
No, that's, they fit in, if you look at it, it's a
Oh,
full
yeah.
map.
Yeah, because it's all the same region.
Yes.
Let's see if I can get this as good as Doc had it originally.
That's all right. I can go back to the
That's
full
pretty
map.
close.
I just need to drop it down a little bit. We had to have it up to the other one.
Nobody can get it as good as that.
Ministry of Jesus.
Oh,
Cause last semester, we received a map that showed where the Garden of Eden was speculated to be.
one of the handout maps that we
Yes.
had? Yeah.
I thought I had it here, but,
Oh,
no.
there's-
And that's really only a speculation too. We don't really know that's exact. Okay?
Oh, I haven't.
So I hope that clarifies for you a little bit. If I give you a quiz and say, hey, put a circle on the map where the Garden of Eden is, can you do that now?
Yeah.
No, because we don't really
Or
know.
close to it.
According to, okay, Miss May, for you, according to the instructions that we've given you in class as to approximately where the Garden of Eden exists.
Oh, approximately, yeah.
Sure, we can't say exact. You're right, we can't say exactly.
Right near the
But-
Persian Gulf.
Somebody says to you, Miss May, where was the Garden of Eden?
Say
You can put your finger pretty close onto it. I'm sure it was big enough that you're not gonna be real far off.
100 miles east.
At least you have something to go to rather than no description or a place.
Something close by, right?
Correct, yeah. So I didn't want to distract from today's lesson, the ministry of Jesus. While we journey with Jesus with our map and our text to help guide us, along with scriptures, bear in mind that we're trying to highlight biblical places, and our time constraints do not allow us to fill every story. This outline does not contain all of the stories and parables relating to our Lord, but deals with the places he visited and some highlights only. Students are encouraged to take notes so they are able to follow out each set of scriptures during their own reading and study time. We have a statement from Wikipedia. Galilee refers to all the area that is north of Mount Carmel, Mount Gilboa Ridge, and south of the east-west section of the Litani River. Okay, see where it says Galilee on the map? We start talking about Galilee, we're talking about maybe this much to this much. We don't know exactly, and they didn't have it defined exactly in those days. They just knew the approximate region and they knew where people lived. They said he lives in Galilee. They would assume that he lived somewhere right in here. Okay. Let's see. I've got quite a description here, but try to follow it on your maps. It'll probably make you crazy. It says, the shores of the Mediterranean Sea with Acre on the west, with the Jordan Rift Valley to the east, and from the Litani. Now, they talk about the Jordan Rift Valley. It's just talking about the valley of the Jordan River. Okay, I'm here, and it says, plus a piece bordering on the Golan Heights, all the way to Dan at the base of Mount Hermon to the northeast. Okay, and remember Dan, part of Dan was up in here. Okay, and Dan at the base of Mount Hermon to the northeast to Mount Carmel and Mount Gilboa on the south. This definition includes the plains of the Jezreel Valley north of Jenin and the Beth Shean Valley, the valley containing the Sea of Galilee and the Hula Valley, although it usually does not include Haifa's immediate northern suburbs. By this definition, it overlaps with much of the administrative northern district of Israel and with southern Lebanon. So you can see that we're still talking about a lot of approximation, but we're just talking about this side of the Jordan River. This is your Sea of Galilee, also sometimes known as the Sea of Tiberias. Okay. And what's the other one? The Sea of Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias, and Sea of Chinnereth. Chinnereth, okay? So sometimes you'll see Chinnereth, sometimes you'll see Galilee, sometimes you'll see Tiberias when you're reading about this. But they're all talking about this body of water right here. Now, just so you're oriented properly, here's your Dead Sea. We've talked about Moses. Where did Moses go? Moses crossed right here, okay? Moses didn't cross, but Joshua crossed over here, Moses died over here.
110.
Huh?
At 110.
Yeah. So, we see that Jesus had lived in the area of Galilee just prior to the beginning of his ministry. Galilee is the area in Israel to the west of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus' hometown was Nazareth, which is found straight west of the south end of the Sea of Galilee. Okay, can you find Nazareth on your maps?
Let's see.
Right there?
Where's the next city?
Okay, now this talks about Nazareth. It says situated in a basin on the south side of a hill, 1,150 feet above sea level. It's talking about a little mountain, not as even as big as these mountains to the east of us here. It's just a little mountain. Okay, 1,150 feet above sea level. From the top of the hill, 10 minutes climb, a view unrivaled in Galilee. To the north, a beautiful panorama of fertile hills and valleys, dotted with prosperous cities, snow-capped Hermon, and in the distance, nearby 3 miles distant, was Gath-Hepher, the ancient home of Jonah. To the south of the plain of Esdraelon, extending from the Jordan to the Mediterranean, the principal scene of Israel's age-old struggle for existence. And it's just talking about the view from here to the Mediterranean. Mediterranean is what's called up here the Great Sea. Okay, if you go look at that big map that you were looking at, map number 4, you can see where the Mediterranean Sea was. This is just a corner of it. Okay, if you get oriented, where you find the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean, you can pretty well keep yourself. Bear in mind, these are separate maps over here on this side. They're not the same map. Okay, they're the same area, but they're little cuts from this one. Okay. So 10 miles to the west of Nazareth, in full view, Mount Carmel. Now 10 miles to the west of Nazareth. Okay. We find Nazareth right here. If we go 10 miles to the west, going this way, and according to our map, this is 10 miles right here. So a distance about that far from Nazareth, right in here, is Mount Carmel, where Elijah, in his contest with Baal, had called down fire from heaven. To the southwest, about the same distance, the pass of Armageddon, famous battlefield of the nations, which suggested to Jesus the name of the great battle of the ages, which he himself will lead his own victory. Okay, and he's talking about Armageddon, which is right over in here. I don't think it's included on this map. Just can't reach that far. It's in which he to the south from Nazareth, only 8 miles, is Shunem, where Elisha raised the Shunammite's son to life. You remember that story? Okay. From Nazareth down here, it should be right about here, Shunem. Okay, and now some of these are not shown on the map. These are just measurements that they gives us. It says nearby the spring of Herod, where Gideon with his 100 had put the Midianites to rout, and Jezreel, where the infamous Jezebel met her unhappy feet, and Mount Gilboa, where King Saul was slain by the Philistines. Now, this is an error, folks. King Saul was not slain by the Philistines. King Saul fell on his own sword. He committed suicide. I want that known.
Really?
Yep,
It says, and Endor, where the witch had called back Samuel's spirit. Okay, this is all occurring around Mount Gilboa. You can find Mount Gilboa.
amen.
I don't know that it's particularly named on here either.
It's near the Valley of Jezreel.
see. I was looking to see on these various maps if one of them,
Map 10.
South of the Sea of Galilee.
yes, it's
You
down,
can see the Sea of Galilee.
it's down right in this area.
An area.
This is just getting you geographically close, folks. And indoor, okay, and then it says the river Kishon, where Deborah and Barak subdued the Canaanites. All this in full view from the top of the hill of Nazareth. Okay, in other words, you could stand on the top of the hill at Nazareth and see all these places. Now I don't know if you know that the horizon is approximately 30 miles, and on flat land. Now, if you're on top of a hill, it's a little bit farther. So all of this would be within 30 miles, then, wouldn't it, from the hill of Nazareth? Okay. If you look down here and you find out where 30 miles is, it's this distance right here. So if you're up here in Nazareth,
Mhm.
and you're thinking about within a circle of this big,
Ah.
okay?
Mhm.
What a center of historic associations. We can imagine that Jesus often climbed the hill and meditated deep on history that had been made to bring him into the world. King Saul was not slain by the Philistines, and I already went into that with you. But if you'd like to look at that story, you want to put it in your notes, 1 Samuel 31, verse 4. Then said Saul unto his armor bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it. We must be ever vigilant when using references other than our King James Bible for errors caused by insufficient research of their authors.
You're explaining that now.
So there are many, many reasons that we use the King James because it has a solid foundation. Okay.
So what's the closest city to Nazareth?
To what? To Nazareth?
Is that
It's all right there.
Right.
Did you cannot find that Nazareth on that map? Is that
It's
what?
on map 10.
Map 10.
We can see.
Go to map.
Nazareth,
Get your
Samaria,
book, Dan. Have you got your book? Go to map 10.
I found the books, I found the maps in my Bible, they were clearly the ones in the book.
Okay.
Oh, no, map
Look at-
10, you can
Look at the sea of, look at this map here in your book.
Right.
Find the Sea of
Right
Galilee.
there.
Okay.
The
and
Sea of
go-
Galilee is right
Go
here.
straight to the east. Okay. You should find Nazareth right there.
Nazareth
Yeah.
right here in map 10, you can see it.
Right from the bottom edge of the Sea of Galilee.
Right here. See? Nazareth, Sea of Galilee, map 10. In this book.
Okay, our map commentary, and that's this part that's over on the side. You can't see it here. Doc's there we go. This commentary is right on there, but I'm read it to you because some of it you can't see. It says our map commentary tells us that Jesus began his ministry at his baptism near a city called Bethany.
Okay, Bethany, where's that? Oh.
Another correction that I didn't get made.
Bethany is where?
That's in
Okay. Bethany, that is described as beyond Jordan, otherwise known as Bethabara. Bethabara. Look right there,
Right there, yeah.
right at the top end of the Sea of Galilee.
Right by Bethel.
Okay, don't confuse this with the Bethany that is near Jerusalem. It is not shown on the current hanging map, but it is clearly marked on map 12 in our textbook, and it refers us to Matthew 3:13 through 17. And I'll read that to you. It says in Matthew 3:13, then cometh Jesus from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized of him. Okay. But John forbade him, saying, I need to be baptized of thee, and comest thou to me? Now we're talking about way down in this area. Okay. Look at the name of the city right there.
And Beulah.
Okay. Matthew 3:15, and Jesus answering saith unto him, Suffer it to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he suffered him. And Jesus, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water. And lo, the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting upon him. And lo, a voice from heaven saying, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Okay. Now, we're also going to talk about Bethabara a little bit more. It says, Origen was a 3rd century Christian scholar from Palestine. And Doc knows a lot more about this guy than I'll ever be able to explain to you, but I'm just going to read you this comment. It says, noticing that in his time there was no place called Bethany east of the Jordan, he suggested to amend the name to Bethabara, an existing place at the time. His suggestion was picked up by some, and it was used in several translations, including the King James Version. So that's how we come to have Bethabara, okay, as a name here. Bethabara, and I've got several words here in Hebrew that I couldn't possibly say, but it means house of the ford or place of crossing. Okay, place of crossing.
It's right at the top of the Salt Sea, isn't it?
Yeah, the top of the Dead Sea, right? Yeah, right there. Is the name used by some versions in the New Testament for the site beyond or east of the Jordan where John the Baptist preached and performed baptisms, where he met with a group of priests and Levites sent by the Pharisees to investigate his ministry, and where he baptized Jesus, Yeshua. And from John 1:28-29, it says, the name Bethabara also appears on the 6th century Madaba map and in the Talmud. The name is used in a number of versions, including the King James Version, following the Textus Receptus and the Geneva Bible of the New Testament. The place where John the Baptist was baptizing in John 1:28 was not called Bethany, but Bethabara. Okay? Following his baptism, Jesus went to the wilderness of Judea, or Judah, where he was tempted, but prayed and fasted for 40 days. Okay, the wilderness of Judea. See right here where it says Judea?
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine if you see these green, that's the top of the mountains, okay? And these are peaks, but you also have this flatland down here along the river, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So he's talking about the plain of Judea, which is right there, okay? It says, where he was tempted, but prayed and fasted for 40 days. Our map commentary tells us this was north of Jericho, okay? Now, where was Jericho? You remember Jericho was right in here? Okay. The map shows it alongside Lake Asphaltitis, or the Dead Sea, and this agrees with the chart in the Thompson Chain Reference Bible. Okay, so if you have a Thompson Chain Reference Bible, there's a chart in there that actually will show you where this is. But let's go to Matthew chapter 4, and I'm going to read to you verses 1 through 11. It said, then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, okay, and saith unto him, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. And Jesus said unto him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again, the devil taketh him into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. And then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. Now, we've been talking about timeline for a long time, and that's basically just the time relating to our current history. We are in AD 2022, right? Okay, and this timeline is approximately AD 27. It's almost exactly 2,000 years ago, isn't it? Getting closer. This year is called by some the year of inauguration, or Jesus' first year of ministry, at the approximate age of 30 years old. Okay? And you say, well, AD 27, how can he be 30 years old? Because he was born actually in 4 BC or 3 BC. Okay?
They messed up the calendar.
The calendar was messed up. So that you understand where AD 27 came from.
Once again, man must have gone.
Because it's very confusing. You know, I like to have thought it'd be AD 33, right? In the year of our Lord 33. Well, if they hadn't messed up the calendar, that's what it would have been. But since it is, we know this, and we can get within 3 years. We're pretty close. John Darby made a comment here. He says, and note here the place the written word has and the character of Christ's obedience. This character is not simply that the will of God is a rule. It is the one motive for action. We have a will arrested often by the word. Not so Christ. His Father's will was his motive. He acted not merely according to, but because it was God's will. We delight to see a child who would run off to something it delights in, stop and cheerfully do its parents' will when called to do it. But Christ never obeyed thus, never sought a will of his own, but was stopped by his Father's. And we are sanctified to the obedience of Christ. Note further that the written word is that by which he lives and by which he overcomes. All depended here on Christ's victory, as all did on Adam's fall. But for Christ, one text, rightly used, of course, suffices. He seeks no other, that is, obedience. It suffices for Satan. He has no reply. His wiles are thus defeated. So what is character? Can somebody volunteer for me what character is, Dan?
Character is who you are. More specifically, what you do and who you are when no one's watching.
When only God is watching.
Right.
Yeah.
God is always watching.
Right.
Okay? And
No.
but that's a fairly good definition. Here's one that's a little shorter. It says, who and what you are when nobody but God is watching. Okay? Condenses it down a little bit smaller. Matthew 4, verse 13 says, And leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the sea coast, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali. Okay, where's Capernaum? Oh, what a famous place. Capernaum's up here. So he was down here in the plains, and then he came up through here, just like on the map. Okay? Capernaum is on the sea coast. That belong in here someplace. Right there. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee. Where would Cana be? Well, if you watch, right up here, it's not very far, not a real far walk. I always have trouble finding Cana.
Galilee.
Huh?
It's above Galilee.
Yeah, just a dot right above
Yeah, right.
Galilee.
Is that it right there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is Galilee, and there's Cana. It's just far enough away, I can't quite focus there. So, and it says the mother of Jesus was there. John 2, verse 1. John 2, verse 2, he says, and both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. So Jesus was invited. And since Jesus was ministering up in this area right at the time, he went to the marriage. And here's a little bit about Cana. Lies about 4 miles from Nazareth on the road to Tiberias. Though occupying a splendid site on the slopes of the low Galilean hills, the town is unattractive. In the churches of the modern village are numerous evidences bearing upon Jesus' visits to the place and traditions associated with these visits. Since the principal highway from the Sea of Galilee to the coast passes through this village, it is likely that Jesus frequently saw it as he went about his ministry in Galilee. The town is mentioned 4 times in the Gospel of John. Jesus then traveled to Capernaum and began to call disciples. The town of Capernaum can be found on the maps on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. Okay? Capernaum is up here on the north shore. This is what they call the north shore. Okay? Capernaum.
What's the other name for the Sea of Galilee again?
Sea of Tiberias, or it may be called the Sea of Chinnereth. The Sea of Chinnereth. Most maps, more modern made maps, will just call it Sea of Galilee because more commonly known to people as that. Capernaum, the headquarters of Jesus after the rejection at Nazareth, is referred to 16 times in the Gospels. The ancient town is to be associated with the modern Tel Hum, the ruins of which indicate a Roman town of considerable importance. Particularly significant is the synagogue, where archaeologists now believe to be dated about AD 200, long after the time of Jesus. It is quite possible that earlier ruins of the 1st century may be beneath the present synagogue or otherwise elsewhere on the site. If an earlier structure is under one which has been exposed by excavation, then it is probable that we have located one of the places in which Jesus preached. Capernaum was an important military and political center, since it is here that one meets the Roman centurion who gave the synagogue to the Jews, and also Matthew, the tax collector, at the customs house. We know nothing of the population of Capernaum, but the references to the city indicate that it was one of the chief places in Galilee, surpassing even Tiberias, the capital of Herod Antipas. You see that name, Tiberias? That's another one of the names that they attached to the Sea of Galilee. Okay, and it says the city was within the territory of Antipas, but 10 miles from Tiberias
Right there.
on the Sea of Galilee. Did you find it, Dan?
Yeah, right on
Okay.
the east shore.
Right on the east shore. Yeah, right in here. Okay. Matthew chapter 4, verse 17 says, from that time Jesus began to preach and say, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Matthew 4:18, and Jesus walking by the Sea of Galilee saw 2 brethren, Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And going on from thence, he saw 2 other brethren, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in a ship with Zebedee their father, mending their nets, and he called them. And Matthew 4:22 says, and they immediately left the ship and their father and followed him. Then we see that Jesus left. Okay, see this trail going down the map? It says, Jesus went to Jerusalem for the Passover. This was the time he cleansed the temple and then visited Nicodemus. And his return trip, he toured Judea with his disciples. In John chapter 3, verse 22, it says, after these things came Jesus and his disciples into the land of Judea, and there he tarried with them and baptized. Okay. Central city, from Halley's Bible Handbook, Jerusalem. Central city of the Bible story. Jerusalem seems to have been chosen of God even before Abraham came to be the earthly headquarters for God's work among men. For Melchizedek was already there in Genesis 14:18. Doc just mentioned Melchizedek recently in our Ten Commandments series. He says, if, as Hebrew tradition holds, Melchizedek was Shem, the survivor of the pre-flood world, oldest living man, priest in the patriarchal period of the whole living population of the earth, then sometimes previous to Abraham's coming, Melchizedek had already come out of Babylonia to take possession in the name of God of this particular spot. Now, where would Babylonia be? We just looked up the Garden of Eden in Babylonia with relation to where we are here. If you look at one of your bigger maps and you find that Babylon, you're going to have to find the Mediterranean Sea. And remember, Babylonia was over there by the top end of that Persian Gulf, right? Makes sense? It says Melchizedek had already come out of Babylonia to take position in the name of God of this particular spot. Melchizedek may have known Abraham as a boy back in Ur and may have had something to do with his call to come to this promised land. Promised land over here, the land of Canaan, okay? When God had chosen his work, Jerusalem was located in the south center of the land of Canaan on the summit of the watershed between Jordan and Mediterranean, about 20 miles from Jordan and about 40 miles from Mediterranean, in a region protected in the west by mountains, on the south by desert, and on the east by the Jordan Gorge. Okay, that makes sense. It's a good description. Jerusalem, sitting right here, the Jordan Gorge, that's what they call this big valley in here. Okay. It was built on a mountain ridge surrounded by deep valleys on the east, south, and west sides. The ridge consisted of two hills with a valley between. The east hill was composed of three smaller hills called the southeast, central east, and northeast hills. The west hill was composed of two smaller hills called the southwest and northwest hills, and being just off the coastal highway where world civilizations met, it was well suited to be the chief seat of God's work among the nations. The city originally stood on the southeast hill. Its naturally impregnable position with a spring of water, Gihon, at the foot of the hill, made it a very desirable location for a walled city. Okay, and when you get way down here where Jerusalem is, and there's another map we'll get into that we'll be able to see a little bit better where all these descriptions fit. But it says, from Jerusalem, here's some things you can relate to. Egypt was about 100 miles southwest, okay, going from Jerusalem this way to the southwest. And my pointer keeps going on the wall behind the maps, but it's just going this way, Egypt. If you look at one of the bigger maps, you can find where the relationship is from Jerusalem to Egypt. Okay, and then it says Assyria was 700 miles northeast. Assyria is going the other way. It's going from Jerusalem that way.
Yeah.
Okay, Babylon 700 miles east, going this way. Okay, Persia 1,000 miles to the east. Okay, still going the same direction. Just keep going. If you have a map that you can see those locations on. Greece, 800 miles to the northwest. That's going way up here. Rome, 1,500 miles to the northwest. When we get into the stories of Paul's missionary journeys, you'll find where these locations are. They're on another map. Okay. David made Jerusalem Israel's national capital in 1000 BC. Okay, you can relate to some of these dates again. a magnificent city destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Remember, we were talking about the captivity that took place. Again, it was a magnificent city in Christ's day, but it murdered him whom it was founded to bring forth. Continuing on his return home, Jesus met the woman at Jacob's well in Sychar in Samaria. Where's Samaria?
Down
There's Samaria.
here, map 12,
And if you look closely, on one of these maps, Sychar is shown.
map 12.
The,
I mean,
the
yeah, map
left hand,
12.
the
This one?
left hand arrow points right at Sychar.
Left. This
Yeah,
one?
come down now, come down to the point.
Right there.
Yeah,
There's
Sychar.
Sychar. So it's kind of halfway between where it says Samaria and Jerusalem is. Not quite halfway, but Sychar. Okay. Sychar is 25 miles north of Jerusalem. Okay. And from Unger's Bible Handbook, Jesus and the Samaritans, John chapter 4, 1 through 45. The hostile Pharisees, 1 through 3, evidently necessitated Jesus leaving for Galilee and going through Samaria, which lay between. Samaria was populated by a mixed people, remnants of the northern tribes who had been taken captive when Israel fell in 722 BC. They used the Pentateuch and worshiped the Lord. Racially and religiously mongrel, they were abhorred by the Jews. And Jesus witnessed to the woman at the well of Sychar in the heart of the plain of Shechem under the shadow of Mount Ebal, showed his compassionate concerns for the loss which transcended all social and religious prejudices. The incident elicited his second great discourse on the water of life in John 4:26. It says, following his first on regeneration from John 3:1 through 21. The woman's testimony had a remarkable effect upon the Samaritans in verses 27 through 39, and opened the way for Jesus' 2-day ministry among them, verses 40 through 45. And then we move to John chapter 4, verse 6. It says, now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water, and Jesus saith unto her, give me to drink. In time, these events are approaching the 2nd year of Jesus' ministry, titled in some references as the year of popularity. Jesus would be about 31 years of age at this time.
Wow.
And we're right at the end of our time period
Wow.
for the lesson today. Are you finding this a little more interesting than following the Old Testament people?
Yes, sir, Professor.
It moves pretty fast. Moves pretty fast, but
Starting to all come together.
you can start seeing these places where Jesus was.
Jerry.
You know, I learned all these stories as a young boy, but I had no idea where any of these places were. They were just words that came out of somebody's mouth. I could tell you the story, but I couldn't tell you where any of them were. So,
Because Gracia gave me that one, so I found it.
thank you for your attention and for your attendance tonight. Rob, would you close our class with prayer?
Lord, I thank you, Father, for allowing us all to be here. I thank you for everything you put in Jerry's heart to teach us. I thank you for all the people that are about to head home to the destination. I ask you please watch over them and make it safe. I thank you for everything, and I say this in Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Lord.